The Wisp, Chapter 9. Colin read from his phone. There isn't any dictionary entries for clavagen. In French, claviger means keeper of keys. And there's a mining company that uses the name, but yeah, that's it. So we still don't have the foggiest what a clavagen is, Amy said, or why the diary was in the library. Colin turned off the screen. Why don't we look at our cast of characters? We've got Sedgwick, the diary author, this wisp being, and some creature that looks just like Bara but without eyes. I think the wisp wanted me to find the diary, and the evil me, well, maybe she didn't want me to, or maybe she was only a nightmare. I don't know, but I'm almost certain the wisp is real. I could smell her in everything. Bara had chosen not to tell Colin about the dark-haired boy. No doubt he'd have teased the stuffing out of her if she'd told him some mysterious boy, a boy she'd never met, visited her dreams on a nightly basis. Besides, she wasn't certain the dark-haired boy had anything to do with the wisp and the doppelganger. She'd been dreaming about him for some time. So for the time being, she kept his non-existence a secret. Let me take another look at the diary. Colin held out his hand and Bara passed it over. He opened it and read aloud. Guinevere arrived in Windfall, dressed in dusty rose velvet, a feather waving from her hat. Her hair was truly golden and her eyes the deepest blue. I fell instantly and hopelessly in love. Some said she'd been born in Europe, orphaned when she was just a babe, and then raised by nuns until she came into her inheritance. Less generous gossip suggested her wealth had come from shadier sources, and even then there were whispers of witchcraft. But I shut my ears to this kind of talk. Guinevere was alone, and I was certain in need of my protection. I knew she'd choose me. Wooing women was a talent I counted as mine. Alas, courting my lady love wouldn't prove easy. Guinevere moved into a cottage in the woods, deep, deep in the wood, said to be surrounded by a hedge maze. She obviously wanted to be left alone. Such was my arrogance, I didn't include myself among those she wished to avoid. She may have wanted a quiet life, but neither I, nor the slip spirits, was about to grant her wish. I told myself if she were but to meet me. Colin paused. A look of alarm overwhelmed his face. Why did you stop? Shh! Someone's coming. Someone or something was indeed coming. Barely heard footsteps approached in the hall. The lightness of the foot and the time in between steps suggested that whoever it was, he or she didn't want to be heard. A footstep, and then silence. A footstep, then silence. But the wooden boards of the dorms were telling, betraying the stalker with every creaking step. Slip spirits? No, not spirits, but no less terrifying. Ladies! A shrill English accent carried down the hall, piercing through the closed dorm door. It's Den Mother. Having announced herself at full volume, Den Mother gave up any further attempt at stealth. Her footfalls were now as heavy as a linebacker on eggshells, and they were coming fast. Amy threw Colin's bag at him. Bara was pushing him to move. You have to get gone now. Colin sprang to his feet, diary still in hand, and headed to the window. No one thought his escape route too dangerous. They were on the second floor, not an impossible jump or climb. After all, it was how he'd gained access to the room in the first place. He was at the open window. He had one foot out. Bara pointed at the diary. Leave that here. Right. Let me know how it ends. He tossed it to her. She slid it under her bed. Lights out, ladies! Den Mother was doing bed checks. Doors could be heard opening and closing all along the hall. The doorknob to the room rattled but didn't open. Amy had locked it. Bara! Came Den Mother's sharp tones. You open this door instantly! Coming, Den Mother. Den Mother had a name, but no one used it. Keys rattled. In seconds she'd be in the room. Colin disappeared from the window frame just as the knob turned. The door flew open and an enormous shadow fell across the room. With her heavily muscled hands on her broad, sturdy hips, Den Mother did a very thorough job of filling the doorway. She had the gait and physique of a tank and was as well armed. Only the extraordinarily simple or suicidal ever crossed her. Are you girls alone? She asked Bara pointedly. Den Mother didn't like Bara, not in the least. She liked few of the students at St. Catherine's. Spoiled princesses, she thought. But this one she held in special disdain. Bara was far too headstrong for her own good, or rather for Den Mother's comfort. Yes, Den Mother, Bara answered with her best imitation of meekness. I heard a third voice, a boy's voice. That's impossible. I know what I heard. Denmother stepped into the room and peered around. Bar looked at Amy, who looked as guilty as one could look. It would be up to her. Bar thought up a lie, quick. "We were practicing," she said. One heavy eyebrow lifted. "Practicing? What were you practicing?" Denmother bore her gaze into Amy, the weak link. Amy remained silent. She looked down, refusing to meet Denmother's stare. Bar rolled her eyes and handed over the book she'd been pretending to read to avoid Colin's questions. Denmother read from the page. "Macbeth!" "Macbeth it is." Bar's mind continued to race to make the lie more believable. "Amy was playing the three witches, and I was playing Macbeth and Banquo." "So fair and foul a day I have not seen," she said in a grasp for a baritone. Denmother studied her. "Impressive performance, Miss Kavanagh." She wasn't buying it. Her narrow eyes focused on the open window. She crossed the room and looked out. Thankfully, Colin had completed his escape. "Why in this weather would you have the window open?" Denmother demanded. "To add mood to the scene," Bar quoted Macbeth once again. "And lightning, thunder, and rain." "The weather certainly is being accommodating to your studies now, isn't it? But let's keep nature outside where it belongs, shall we?" Denmother closed the window with a little more force than necessary. She had no way of proving her suspicion, and so she had to let it go. But she knew, as sure as raccoons like to eat garbage by the pale light of the moon, she'd been deceived. She vowed to keep a closer eye on this little snippet. "Lights out in 5 minutes, and I'll be back to check." After throwing Bar one last glare, Denmother exited the room. Amy and Bar knew she'd be true to her word. They wouldn't be surprised if the old bat was listening just outside. Amy jumped up and closed the door, but a closed door was little defense against her prying. It would be best to do as she directed and go to bed. Further reading of the diary would have to wait. Bar slipped it out from under the bed and placed it in the top drawer of her desk. She locked the desk and placed the key under her pillow. Then she and Amy got ready for bed. 5 minutes later, probably to the second, Denmother opened their door. Amy and Bar had turned out the lights. They were deep under the covers, pretending to be asleep, fooling no one. Denmother sniffed like she smelled something rotten and closed the door. The Wisp is published on Amazon.com. Also available on Amazon is Monsters, Real and Imagined, Tragic, Frightening, and Funny, All Too Brief, a collection of short stories and poetry. Strays, a collection of short stories and philosophical love poems, and Tattoo, Calling All Soldiers Home.